What's up, guys? We are live for today's AMA. I'm Greg Mercer. I'm joined by my co-host, Rolando Galeano. Rolando, welcome back.
Hey, how's it going, Greg? Good to be back.
Excellent. Let us know what questions you guys have for us. The purpose of these $1 million case study AMAs is to answer any questions you guys have. So as you know, throughout season 4 of the $1 million case study, every Tuesday we're posting a new video, and every Thursday we're answering all the questions you guys have for us. I see that the chat box is already full of questions, and we already have a whole bunch of the good ones there. So let's go ahead and get started, Rolando. Pick your favorite question. Let's answer it.
All right, let's start with Chris, who's asking on YouTube, what's the proper order of actions after you've confirmed the product? Create listing, where to get pictures from before you have the product, or create Amazon shipping plan, or pay for mass order. And so it looks like there's three different things. Either do we create the listing, do we create the shipping plan, or do we create the mass order? What would come first?
Good question. The listing would come last. That would be the least important to set up. You have plenty of time to do that. What are our other options? It was the shipping plan or what?
Or place the order.
I would start with just placing the order. That's the most important thing. That's what's going to take the longest, and that's when it's going to kind of like hold you back from a time frame standpoint. So I would place the order. Shortly after that, I would place the shipment plan. I guess that would be the next thing to do. And we're going to go more in depth about how to create these shipment plans, and we walk you through how to do it. And I think that's next week or in 2 weeks. Then after doing that, you can create your listing while the product's being manufactured. Okay, so you don't feel like you have to do that before your product's even manufactured. The longest part is to get it manufactured and to get it shipped into Amazon. And during that downtime, you have plenty of time to be working on the rest of this stuff.
Yeah, and it would be episode 8 where we're going to dive deep into shipment, into shipping, shipment plans, all that good stuff.
Cool. Looks like from Mohammed, we said, can you please talk about paying the supplier a portion of the total amount, then what's left after shipping? When is it best to pay the full amount up front? It's never the best to pay the full amount up front, and that would be very, very uncommon. The most common payment terms, I would say, are 30% up front and 70% either when it's shipped or after you develop a good relationship with the supplier once it arrives at port, like in the US. But 50-50 payment terms are also pretty common, especially if they realize that you're a small business and this is like the first time working with that better factory. So just like the cost of ordering these products, payment terms are negotiable. But you do need to understand that before you've really developed a relationship with these factories, don't expect the best payment terms. After like you place your second and third and fourth order and go and visit them in China and all that, that's when you can really start talking about some better payment terms.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question here that also popped up in the Facebook group, and I mentioned that we'll dive deeper into it. Mohammed asks, can you please talk about paying the supplier? Wait, I apologize. I'm going back to Christoph asks, why are you calculating the ROI from the landed cost? Because I'm calculating from the total cost, which includes the FBA fees and the PPC ad cost as well.
Yeah, good question. All right. And this is really just how you want to think about your accounting or how you think about your money management. The reason that I think about my ROI on my landed cost is the cash that I have to pay out of pocket, okay? Things like FBA fees and PPC costs, those are just deducted out of my revenue, out of my sales by Amazon automatically before the cash is distributed to me, okay? So like the way I like to think about it is like the money that I have to take out of my pocket that I have to pay someone, I wanna see what the return I'm getting on that particular cash. So it's just a different way to think about it. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way, but that's how I go about thinking about it. If you want to think about it differently, feel free to do so.
Yeah, it's return on investment. So it's kind of like the cash up front that you're having to shell out before anything and before you can get the ball rolling. So using the landed cost just makes more sense from a money management standpoint.
Peace Lotus asks, how do you decide how many units for the first order? And the way I go about thinking about this is I search for my main keyword. I check to see how many units are being sold on a monthly basis. Let's say like for the top 10 sellers or the top 5 sellers. And then I think about how many units I think that I'll be selling per month, okay? Based off gauging off of what my competition is selling per month, all right? After I've done that, then I usually order about 3 months worth of inventory, okay? Unfortunately, getting products manufactured in China is a pretty slow process. It takes about a month. If you ship your goods ocean freight, that's about another month. So that's like a 2-month process. And that's why I order about 3 months to get started. That gives me about a month worth of inventory. And then that's when I start to be thinking about how much I need to place for my next order.
Excellent. We were beginning to answer this question, but we had some audio issues. Sergio asked, how do you feel about competing with products that have been selling for years? I found an established niche or niche, however you want to pronounce that has low competition, but all the competitors have been selling their products for years.
There's like 1,000 different ways to be thinking about how to do your product research, what factors to consider. The factors that I personally consider are all the things that we talked about during episode 1 and episode 2. So length of time selling on Amazon, that's not one of the factors that I directly think about or consider when I'm talking about looking at my competition and like gauging competition.
Excellent. I have another one for you, Greg.
All right.
Following, this is from SIRIU. I'll just leave it at that. Following the dispatch of the first sample by the supplier, could we ask for a free of charge sample if we had to order a second, a third? What's your experience showed so far in this?
My experience is factories very rarely give you free samples if they have to ship them internationally. If you're actually in China, so like 2 years ago, I spent like 2 months in China. And during that time, I was ordering samples and just getting them shipped to the hotel I was staying at. And when you're in China, it's very easy to get a whole bunch of free samples. They'll give you the samples for free. They'll ship them to you for free. But I don't think I've ever gotten a sample for free when they're the ones that have to pay for the shipping internationally. Because, you know, depending on how much it weighs, they're probably have to pay 30, 40, 50 bucks just to ship the sample. And at this point, you haven't really proven that you're like serious about actually placing like a larger order for this. So, I mean, you can ask anything you want, but I wouldn't count on getting those samples for free.
Correct. And you touched on this in episode 6, where the samples is that starting point of that relationship building. So you don't want to come across like you're not serious about what you're looking to, that you're looking to purchase from them. So yeah, absolutely would agree with that. All right.
One from Johnny says, how do I go about negotiating on the price? The best advice I have for you, the best recommendations I have for you on this is, if you legitimately do have multiple factories that are giving you multiple prices, this puts you in the best possible scenario for negotiating, okay? Because you just have the most leverage, right? You can leverage these different factories against each other. You can say like, oh, they offered it to me for that cost. I guess other little tips or advice I have for you is maybe be thinking about like, okay, if you were to offer it to me at this price, I could sell it for a little bit cheaper. And as a result, I could sell more units per year. So I'd be ordering more units from you. Those are just a few little tips. One last thing that I'll kind of just say about this is that oftentimes I see people like really trying to just like pound the heck out of their supplier about getting like 5 cents cheaper, 10 cents cheaper. And it like turns into like this big battle. And at a certain point, is that last like 5 cents really that important? Or is just like having a good relationship with the factory like more important? I'm usually in the latter category for this, okay? And something else to think about, like if you're, I do negotiate all my prices and I try to get the best price that I can. But like if you're always really beating up on your factory about like every last little thing, they're not going to be that excited about like pushing your production run like to the front of the line to help you get it shipped quicker and all these types of little things. So it's just like something to think about like more holistically, that it's not always just about like getting the last little few cents cheaper.
Awesome. And I got a cool shout out here from Instagram. And it's just saying, took action during the European market $1 million case study. And my first product is a massive success. Now I'm on to my second product. I can't thank you guys enough. It's always cool when we get those those stories, the success stories coming through. So keep dropping them in there if you have them. But
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you very much for that. That is cool. It's always we give away all this content for free and do all these case studies and stuff, and that's really like what like motivates us and like keeps like myself and Rolando like driven. Like, oh man, like it's amazing how many people we're helping through this. So yeah, that's a really awesome story. Thank you for sharing.
Awesome. Shakir, this is an interesting question. Previously, you both had recommended manufacturers instead of trading companies. However, if a trading company offers you the best quote and quality, is it okay to choose a trading company?
Yeah, good question. You need to understand about. Okay, so I try not to work with trading companies. I'll just say that, okay? It seems like it's usually easier for me to just work directly with the factories. I get like quicker communication with them. It's usually a better price. All that being said, if this trading company is great to work with, they're giving you a good price, and you know you can then this is what's going to kind of cause you to go on and like launch this product successfully. I just say go for it. You know, like it is fine to work with trading companies. I usually prefer directly working with the manufacturer, but hey, if they can get you your product, they're good to communicate with, you're going to make money on it, like sure, go for it.
Absolutely. And let's see here. So we've got Hong asking on YouTube, do you also ask for samples of the packaging box at this stage? So we're getting our
So
samples in, and do we ask for samples of the packaging yet?
yeah, good question. All right. So the way that packaging is created, the majority of the time, is they make like one plate per color on your packaging. Okay. So if you have one box, then you have like three colors on it, they make like three different plates. All right. Now, the thing about it is those plates are, I think, fairly expensive to make, like relatively. And because of that, there's a minimal order quantity, like just for the boxes. Okay. So you have to order like 1,000 boxes. And that's because they have to make those plates. And after they make the plates, they can print off boxes really, really fast. And it's no problem. It's cost effective and quick to do so. The reason I tell you all this is because it's going to be hard to get a one-off sample, because like that's the process that they go through. Occasionally, factories can use a different printing process in order to give you a sample of it. However, me personally, I very rarely ask or like require, actually I never really do, like a one-off sample of the box or the packaging to get started. All right. I do, however, ask them after they print off that order of like 500, 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever it is, to go ahead and send me one of them so I can then proof it. And if they screwed up on it, that's when I tell them like, hey, like the drawings I sent you showed this, that's not what you sent me. Like that needs to be redone. And it just gives you an opportunity to fix any errors, even though it's still going to be a huge headache before they start like packaging all those boxes full of your product.
Fantastic. So Adventurous Human on YouTube asks, and this is from the live episode release. How do you know how many in a carton? How many of a product in a carton?
Yeah, so you just ask your factory this. It depends on the product that you're selling and the carton that they're putting them in, and like whatever else. You just ask the factory. The only tip I have for you here is there's a maximum weight of cartons to send into Amazon if you're using small parcel delivery. I think that number, now I forget if it's 50 or 70 pounds. We can look that up, but it's also really easy to find on Amazon's website. And the only lesson I've learned the hard way is one of my cartons were very big and very heavy, and they were above that. And Amazon can actually charge you fees if like they kind of like pick up on that. So that's the thing. You don't want them to be like too big and too bulk. That's the only tip I have for you there.
All right. We're getting a lot of shipment questions, which we'll cover in a later episode, but definitely I guess this ties in with this episode as well. You can't really separate the two, right? We're starting to do our budgeting. So Catherine asks, my supplier is offering me FOB destination. Is there a reason you prefer FOB shipping points instead? And if so, why?
She said FOB destination?
Is offering me FOB destination. Is there a reason you prefer FOB shipping point instead? And if so, why?
To be honest, I'm not familiar with that terminology. Is that maybe just another terminology for different Incoterms? Like, I guess the only Incoterms that I've ever used or that I'm familiar with is just Ex Works or FOB. Ex Works pretty much means that you're responsible from getting it straight from the factory to its final destination, where FOB or free on board. And we're going to talk all about these during our shipping episode. That's referring to the factory has to get the units to the port to send them out from the port, okay? So I'm not really familiar with like the terminology that you're specifically asking about. I'd just say be knowledgeable about those two. Those are the most two common terms. So like if I'm shipping just like UPS or FedEx or something else, I'm just gonna ask for Ex Works pricing. If I'm shipping ocean freight, then I'm gonna ask for FOB freight pricing because I want my factory to be responsible for getting it from their factory to the port. All right. So FOB will be a little bit more expensive, and that's to be expected because they're the ones shipping it to the port.
Awesome. And we're going to circle back to episode 6 because we're covering episode 8 right now in terms of shipping. So this is a good question. It's a follow-up to the original question on ROI. Christoph is asking, thanks, I got your point in your ROI calculation. But in the end, FBA fees and PPC ads will also cost, which can impact strongly your profitability. How are you handling these costs?
So those costs are included in our worksheet, right? The way that you can determine FBA costs is you can either use the Jungle Scout Chrome extension or you can use the Amazon free FBA fee calculator. And you can just Google that, like free Amazon FBA calculator. It's on Amazon's website and they'll show you the FBA fees. All right. Or like I said, it's included in the Jungle Scout Chrome extension and in the web app if you have either of those products. So that's easy to do. As far as PPC costs, a rule of thumb that I use is 5% of my revenue is going to be devoted to PPC. Okay. Now, my advertising cost of sale, my ACoS, is going to be higher than 5%. 5% would be like world-class, better than I've ever seen, okay? But you also have to understand not all your sales are going to come from PPC, all right? So that is at that point kind of spread out throughout all your sales. So the rule of thumb that I personally use, and I've come up with this rule of thumb by looking at all of my products, is 5%. So if I'm selling, $100 worth of goods per day, I would estimate that my PPC cost would be $5 on top of that. In really competitive markets, it's going to be more than 5%. It's probably going to be more like 10, 15%, something else. In non-competitive markets, it's going to be less than that. Of course, it's also going to depend on what your organic rank is, because that's going to depend how much you decide to spend on PPC. But 5% for PPC costs is the rule of thumb that I personally use.
Awesome. Since we're along that vein of budgeting and calculating, MIDI Ventures asks on YouTube, where do you include duties and other charges?
I factor in the duty costs with my shipping costs. So yeah, there's a lot of shipping questions here, and I promise we're doing a whole episode in this if you just wait another week and a half. But I'm gonna get a price quote from my freight forwarder, like for my ocean shipment, and they're gonna include all those different fees and costs in their overall price quote, okay? And then if it costs $500 to do the shipment, the way that I personally think about it is just to divide those costs into like each additional unit. So I add that on to my landed cost, all right? Again, with all things accounting, ROI, there's lots of different ways that different people's brains go about thinking about these different things, but that's the way that I like to personally do it, okay? So that's what I get a price quote from my freight forwarder that includes all the duties and all the other shipping fees. The way my brain thinks about it is that's part of my shipping fees because that's who I pay for it. And then I factor that into my landed cost.
Fantastic. Angela from YouTube asks, why contact so many suppliers then narrow down? Why don't you advise in-depth factory research before sending out requests to factories to those that aren't gold suppliers, or use a trade assurance? I could take a stab at this one. I think a lot of it comes down to, depending on your niche or category, the reason you want to start with a broad search is initially you may not get that many factories in exchange or return. But if you do, you can start filtering down And then, of course, sending out the initial, the supplier contact form. It's already written out for you. It's a very fast process at that point, just reaching out. And over time, they're going to weed themselves out because not everyone is going to contact you back. We talked about that. It's like 50 to 70% will contact you and answer and then from that list, how many are answering all the questions and how thorough and are they? And so I think that you can't just start diving deep into narrowing out the gate. You definitely want to start broad and narrow. I don't know if you want to add to that, Greg. Anything?
No, that's the exact same way I think about it. The reason I do it in this order is just because most of the factories either don't respond or have really crappy responses. And then I'm like, I don't care how long you've been a gold supplier. Like, it seems like you suck to work with. So in that case, yeah, who really cares, right? So if you would rather do all the vetting on the factories first before you decide who to contact, that's perfectly fine. At the end results can end up being about the same. That's just the way that I've found over the years works best for my personal workflow.
Yeah, and if this is your first time doing this as well, it kind of gives you a little experience, a little practice on how to go about reaching out. You can't screw this up. Remember, guys, you really can't screw this up other than you're not doing the work. You're not putting in the hustle. So just keep contacting suppliers and narrow down from there.
Sally Ma says, what if I only found one supplier on Alibaba? I would encourage you to broaden your search term a little bit, okay? This is either like a very, very niche product or you just aren't searching for the right search terms. So for example, if we searched for wooden clamp-on keyboard tray, there probably wouldn't be that many factories, right? But if we search for keyboard tray, then all of a sudden we have a whole bunch more. So that's one thing that I'd recommend. The second thing I would recommend, if like you're making some pretty big customizations to this product, then another way you can get more factories, or another good way to be thinking about this, is to think about what other products would be very similar to yours and maybe look for a factory that makes that particular item, okay? So I don't have too many props in front of me, but two that I do is a keyboard tray and a mouse pad, or like a little trackpad. Let's pretend I couldn't find a factory to make a trackpad. You could look for factories that make keyboards, because like probably this similar equipment is what like makes or assembles both of those different things. So that's a good way to go about it. Just think about what other products would be similar, what other factories, what machinery would factories have that would make that product, is kind of a way that I think about it.
All right, we have a question from the Winton family. Do you have a printed process of vetting suppliers? Also, is there a way to vet other than what is on Alibaba? I would say to the written or printed process, we do. In fact, if you go to junglescout.com/MDCS 4-6, it's all been laid out for you there, as far as you can just go in and print that off as a PDF. And alternatively, we also always include a workbook of, it just really boils down everything to what you need to take action for this week, this episode. So if you, same place, you find it there, enter your email at the bottom of the blog post, and you'll get the workbook that ties in and correlates with that episode. So I think that would be your best place for a printed process. Greg, is there a way to vet other than what is on Alibaba? Would you respond to that?
No, I think you covered that one pretty well, Rolando. So we got a nice shout out here from Eddie Yu. He says, massive shout out to Greg and the Jungle Scout team. Loving everything you guys are teaching. I started 1 year ago this month, and I just launched my 5th product. This knowledge works, people. Just trust Greg and follow. Thank you very much for that, Eddie. That's an amazing success story. Congratulations. It's really you. You're the one that put in all the hard work to make that happen. We're just giving you a little bit of information to help you along your journey. So congratulations. Samantha said, do you negotiate the cost for all different quantities or just the main quantity you plan on ordering? This really depends on the factory. I usually see what initial quote they give me. Then if I'm planning on ordering more units than that, you definitely can ask for better pricing. The more units you order, you can plan on getting better pricing. If you're ordering a few amount of units, expect to pay a little bit more. So, if you're not too happy with your price per unit, but you're willing to pay more units, and you can say like, hey, instead of ordering 500, if I order 1,000, can you knock off like another $1? So feel free to do that as part of your negotiation process.
All right. We've got a question here. Let's see here from Reed Veto. I've always been nervous about sending directly from a supplier to Amazon. Nervous that the quality, what's to be expected. What quality controls do you set up to ensure there are no quality issues? So
yeah, good question.
China all the way to Amazon, and what quality controls do we put in place?
Yeah, so one thing that I do, and this is totally free, is I ask all the factories to send me pictures of the product as it's being produced, okay? So I want to see that, I ask for all kinds of stuff just because I know they'll give it all to me for free. Like I want to see like the raw materials, and I want to see like it being manufactured and it being put into the box and it being assembled or put into the cartons or like whatever else. I just ask for all kinds of stuff just because A, it's kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun to see your product as it's being manufactured. And B, it helps me spot quality issues along the process. It's like, whoa, that was supposed to be pink and you're painting it red. Like that doesn't look right, or like whatever else. So that's one easy and free thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is you can hire a third party. There's a lot of services. A couple of the ones that I use are VTrust or Asian Inspection. And you can pay someone to go to the factory and to do an inspection either while it's being produced or before it's shipped out. So those are just like a few of the quality control measures that I use that I would recommend you guys do as well. If you end up doing those, I pretty rarely have quality issues. There's always some things that can, of course, go wrong, like once it arrives at Amazon and is shipped to the end customer, but that's like kind of the best you can do that's within your control.
Cool. And in that, you answered another question of which inspection companies you use. So
there we go. Two birds, one stone.
Nice. So let's see here. What else we got?
Here's one from Salman. Says, how long should a supplier be in business to take them seriously? I don't know if I necessarily have like a bare minimum, like they have to be in business for like 2 years or whatever else. But that is just like one of the gauges that I use when I'm comparing different factories. So like if there's two factories that seem about the same, one's been like a gold supplier for 12 years, the other one's been like for like 1 year, I probably trust the 12-year person more. That being said, like if the 1-year person seems really easy to work with and they, just like their sample is of good quality, like they're eager and hungry to kind of like prove themselves, the communication's good, then I wouldn't necessarily like not be willing to work with them.
All right. And El Garali asks, what's the problem of trade company over manufacturer if it's good to communicate and with good price? I think you touched on this earlier, but they're just wondering as to they're good communicators and good price. What could be the problem with a trade company?
The only other reasons that I normally stay away from trade companies is that the communication's usually a little bit slower. It's usually like if I'm trying to make changes, a little bit more difficult because I have to communicate through a third party. But all that being said, like if you're happy with this trading company, they're giving you a good price, they're easy to work with, the lead times are good, and that's like what it's going to take for you to get this thing launched, then yeah, just go for it.
Awesome. Next up, Adventurous Human asks, do you have any experience with Upwork sourcers in China?
No experience with them. I think there are also people on the Jungle Market, which if you're not familiar with the Jungle Market, you can check it out, junglemarket.com. But it's a marketplace for pre-vetted Amazon experts to provide their services for Amazon sellers. So they specialize working with Amazon sellers, and we've pre-vetted them to make sure they're of high quality. I think there's also some on there, so feel free to check that out. I don't have any experience working with these sourcers on through Upwork. I typically just find my factories straight from Alibaba.
Yeah, save yourself that expense. I know that that's one of those things that I'm pretty confident that everyone watching can definitely can manage and really knock it out of the park. So let's see
Here's a good
here.
one. Yeah, here's one from Daniel that says, I need to combine 2 separate parts from 2 different suppliers to make my product. Who combines them? I would highly recommend that you get your factory to combine these. Like, I recommend that you work with one factory, you pay one factory, and you have that factory coordinate with the second factory to get it manufactured, get it shipped to them, whatever else. I've made this mistake before, and I know some people do it, and like, that's fine. Like, you can still be successful at it, but it gets to be a little bit of a headache trying to coordinate between these 2 different factories. It's much easier if you just have like your sales rep do all the coordination. They're on the same time zone. They speak the same language. It just seems like it's so much easier just have them do it. So that's what I recommend. Just tell them you want to bundle these. It's like, I want to use you to make this product. I want to use you for the packaging. And I want you to do the bundling. Can you just coordinate with this other factory? I've already found one that I like. That's what I'd recommend.
Absolutely. Salima asks, what are some mistakes that you have seen people make on product research and picking a supplier?
Yeah, so there's lots of potential mistakes to make. That's the purpose of the $1 million case study, to cover all these different items and make sure you guys don't make these mistakes. So I don't know if like 1,000 jump to mind, but these are just all the things that we're covering all throughout the $1 million case study, okay? So I think if you're watching each episode of this season 4, the $1 million case study, then I think you should be covered from making all these mistakes that I often see people who haven't quite been well educated on the subject make.
Awesome. I'll let you pick the next one, Greg. I've been hogging up all the...
In your experience, what's been the % difference in start asking price and agreed purchase price? Yeah, good question, Richard. This is a little bit hard to say. This is typically what I do, okay? I get quotes from like a few different factories, right? 3, 4, 5, and then after you do that, you usually have a pretty good gauge of what you can expect that this thing costs, right? Because like one factory quotes you $9, 3 factories quote you between like $7 and $7.50, and one factory quotes you like $6. And usually that low ball, like sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's a little bit of a red flag. But then normally what I do, like if I don't like that lowest price, I'll just ask those other ones like, hey, you originally quoted me $7.50. I found another factory that can make it for $6. Can you match that particular price? All right. So it really depends. Like everyone hates the answer, it depends, including myself. So like if I were to give you like a general ballpark or rule of thumb, maybe 10% or 20%, but I don't know. Sometimes I've gotten the price down a long ways. Other times I've haven't really gotten it down hardly at all.
All right. So Muammer asks, can you use an agent who collects all of your samples from multiple suppliers and send them all in one shipment? So you touched on this already, but
yeah, I know there are people like this that exist. They can consolidate samples for you. I've never personally used them. There probably is some cost savings, but for me, I'm always just really anxious and I just like to move fast and get these new products shipped. And if I have to usually what I find is one supplier takes 1 week, one supplier takes 3 weeks, and the other supplier's like, sorry, I can't get this for 6 weeks. And it's I don't want to wait 6 weeks to get the sample from that factory that could have sent it to me in 1 week. So I guess there is some cost savings there, but I usually opt instead for the quickness, the speed of getting the samples.
All right. Samantha's up next on YouTube. She asks, I know in the Jungle Scout videos for the hooded baby towel, you specifically said to go to the factories directly and skip the trading companies. Is there any exceptions to this? We're getting a lot of those trading versus manufacturer questions.
Yeah, so I've answered this a couple times throughout this AMA, but I prefer working directly with the factories. It's usually more cost effective. It's usually, you can get the products quicker. Communication's usually quicker. All that being said, the exception to that is if you find a good trading company, they can get you your product, they're good to work with, the price is good, then who cares? Just go with them, all right? I'd prefer not to, but the most important thing for you guys if you've never launched a product is just getting started. And I'm totally aware of the fact that little hiccups along the way and little speed bumps along the way is like what can discourage someone. So like they're not quite confident, or they're like, crap, I don't know how to do this anymore. I can't quite get to the next step. If something like that exists, and that's because like you can't find a factory, but you have a really good trading company, just go with the trading company. Who cares? Just go with them. It's fine.
Cool. Salima asks, what are some areas where you experienced some headaches when starting, and how did you fix it?
Entrepreneurship involves lots of headaches. There's no real way around that. That's part of being an entrepreneur. There's gonna be challenges and there's gonna be headaches along the way. I don't know if I can even think of just one off the top of my head that I can give you advice how to fix it. Again, I think this is kind of like I'm throughout the $1 million case study, I'm like sharing all these lessons that I've learned along the way by like launching all these different products. So, and in there, you'll hear me share, some of these like stories about bad experiences, lots of good experiences as well. But just like little things, since we're talking about like finding suppliers right now, I just shared that one about one time I tried to like work with 2 different factories and try to coordinate between the 2 different factories to get them to send the goods to one factory and then to bundle it up. It's like that's a headache I've had along the way, but there's lots of just like little things like that. But yeah, this is the purpose of the $1 million case study, is like we're teaching you all these things to try to minimize the number of headaches, but just accept there's going to be some headaches. That's part of it.
Yeah, I often say that as an entrepreneur, I use the term fail forward, because you're going to hit roadblocks, you're going to encounter those challenges, but it doesn't mean that's the only answer and the only solution. Early on, when I started selling on Amazon, I think one of the challenges I faced was that I tried to vet beforehand, which we just talked about. And I think I learned the lesson of stop doing that and just go broad and just really try to get as much manufacturers to respond to my questions and start betting in that process, versus starting with just a couple and then ultimately they fell through the wayside, and then now I'm right back at square one, having to do this process all over again. I did that the first time. I was doing product research, finding a manufacturer, and I learned my lesson the hard way. And so now I just go big and then narrow down from there.
Jay just made a good comment in the chat box. He said, working for a company results in bigger headaches than being an entrepreneur. Yeah, that might be true too. So I guess that's part of life, right? Just some headaches being included. Another one on YouTube says, is the high price on Alibaba mean good quality in general? No, I wouldn't say just because their price is the highest or a higher price, the quality is necessarily higher, right? So yeah, I wouldn't gauge the price that they give you. That's not a direct indication by any means of the quality of that product. Colin said, how much time should you spend in product development if you're making lots of changes? Collins, this is a good question, and this really depends. Again, no one likes that answer, but this really depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like if you're trying to essentially invent your new item, then it's going to require quite a bit of time, right? Like going back and forth with the factory. If you're just making some small changes, it might be a little bit quicker. If you're making a few changes that are small to medium in nature, maybe it takes you 4 to 6 to maybe 8 weeks through that product development time of sending them something, getting a sample. But the most important thing here is just keep at it, right? Don't get discouraged. Just keep working towards it. And yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need to put a time frame on it, but more so just be thinking about every day, what can I do to continue to move this project forward and get this product launched?
All right. Reginald on YouTube asks, is it risky to use a public communication platform with a supplier when using trade assurance with that supplier? And is it an example would be Alibaba versus Skype?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to ask here is, will you still be covered for trade assurance if you don't communicate through the Alibaba platform? And the answer to that is yes, you'll still be covered by trade assurance even if you're not communicating through their platform. When you place an order through the Alibaba Trade Assurance platform, what happens is you have to list product requirements and price and a few other things that I kind of forget right now. And that's what they used to like make sure that it was delivered correctly. If the case got like more heated, maybe having communication through the Alibaba platform would help with that a little bit. Thankfully, I've never really had to actually use or like file a claim through the Alibaba Trade Assurance, so I'm not really sure. But for me, I usually just communicate with whatever's fastest and easiest with the factory. Sometimes that's through Alibaba messaging. Sometimes that's through Skype chat. Sometimes that's through WeChat. A little bit of a mess now that I say all that out loud.
And you do put some protective measures in this week's episode. We give you the free download for the contract, the supplier contract. There's some protective measures there, just kind of outlining what the expectations are. So using that, especially if you're using Skype or some other third-party communication platform, you'll definitely want to use that contract.
All right, we have one last question, and then we're going to do our giveaway for today's AMA. This one again is from Serious Scasm. He said, hey, it's Mike. Is it okay to ask the supplier to include the cost of the packaging in the FOB or XWorks price? Should we trust them to do the packaging on our behalf? Yes, I always use the factory. I always had the factory do my packaging for me. That sounds like a huge headache trying to get packaging from somewhere else and coordinate with the factory to get it there so they can pack it or whatever else. I always just have my factory take care of the packaging. That doesn't mean that they print it at their factory. I'm sure like almost all these factories hire a third party to do the printing for them, but I don't care. All I care about is that they're the one handling all those logistics. And yes, I ask for the price to include the packaging. So not only is that okay, but I would recommend for you to do so. With that being said, Rolando, who won today's giveaway?
Ding, 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 ding. It is Salima Haji. Come on down. You're the next contestant. You're the winner, actually.
All right. So congratulations, Salima.
Up that chat box.
Yeah, we appreciate you asking all of the questions. You get a Jungle Scout Pro Chrome extension. Shoot us an email at freedombuilders@junglescout.com and we will get you hooked up for your prize. So thank you very much for asking all those questions. That wraps up today's episode. Rolando, it's been fun chatting with you. If you guys aren't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, I would encourage you to do so to make sure you're notified of all of our upcoming $1 Million Case Study videos. Wherever you're watching at, we would love it if you would give us a big thumbs up. That's what gets Rolando and I stoked to come back every single week and continue to answer you guys' questions. Thank you very much for tuning in. Rolando, adios, man. See ya.
Keep crushing it, Freedom Builders.